Today on the podcast, let's talk a little bit about the psychology of money. We're going to get into some of the fine points there from Morgan Housel's book here on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with Phil and I as we talk investing, finance, and retirement, and a little psychology. Never hurt anybody, Phil. Well, maybe it did, but when it comes to money, you're part psychologist sometimes. Like all you guys have to kind of play that role. So, how you doing? You doing all right?
Doing good. Yeah, it's funny. I always joke about with my clients on that. It's like, all right, don't make me break out the psychologist couch, and we'll have that discussion. So,
is that a different fee?
Yeah, it's a different rate structure. Then I can bill medical for that. So, although I guess I'm not a physician, so I can't. But
there you go. Well, you guys have to wear multiple hats, right? You have counselor, you have marriage counselor, you have psychologist.
Yeah, money kind of entwines all that. So.
It does, right? Well, because we're emotional creatures, right?
Yep.
So I know this is on your reading list. So if we were starting a financial book club, this would certainly be on the reading list.
Absolutely.
It'd be on the itinerary, right? I think that's the right word, itinerary. So it's Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. And he's not a financial advisor, which is interesting. He's just really, really interested in obviously finance and then the psychology and how we react to things. And it's one of those books that a lot of financial advisors refer to. Yep. So we'll have some different things will pop up here during the show for people to check out. But I want to kind of go through basically just four main concepts that he kind of talks about a little bit in there, and just kind of relate that back to what you see in your 30 plus years of experience, right, of dealing with people. And so concept number one I really like, and it's that no one is crazy.
Yeah.
Now he might want to revisit that now that in the world that we live in today, but he really talks about
a little bit more crazy, but
yeah, right. But from a financial standpoint, how you feel about money typically is influenced by the various things you see when you are growing up. And it doesn't make you right or wrong. You have to maybe accept that that's how it affects you. And then when you're working with someone like yourself, Phil, hopefully that they can help you with that so that you can kind of work through some of the biases or the various things that are going to affect your money decisions.
Right. I mean, this is typical with anything. If you think about it, your experiences shape who you are.
For sure.
And how you react. And it's not just yours, but even your parents, because you kind of inherit some of that. I mean, they were a big part of your life for the most informative years. So
right.
How they reacted, you naturally kind of lean towards that.
Yeah, you either copy it or you go the other way, right? Like my dad was a big smoker and I've never touched cigarettes my whole life. So, but some people would, right?
Yeah. So the experiences that you've had are going to absolutely in finances play heavily into how you view things, and that's an interesting part of our job. You talked about the psychology side of it. As a financial advisor, I mean, I look at things one way and I'm very methodical math. I mean, it's,
sure.
CPA, it's by the numbers, that kind of
logistics, right?
Yeah, exactly. And emotions definitely play into it. But for my mind, it's always the math side of it first. But I mean, I've got to be careful and conscious in working with clients and helping to understand where they're at, because I mean, I can drown somebody with math and numbers and this just makes sense. And, what are you, crazy?
Right.
That kind of thing. But it's like, no, it's not how you need to approach it. You've got to understand where somebody's coming from and to the point of this. Yeah, no one's crazy. It's just who we are. It's our experiences.
Right.
Somebody probably looks at me and some of the things I think mathematically and walking
you're
through
crazy.
Like, you're crazy. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'd never do that, which is fine.
Well, and the house tends to follow it. That's true. That is what makes the world interesting. And the house tends to be a big one of this, right? If you think about it, because if you're talking about the logistics or the math, sometimes we can look at it and go, all right, the math says I've got a really low interest rate. I should put my money, some of this extra money and put it in different investments or whatever and grow that at a higher rate.
Yes.
But the emotion says, well, I got the money and I really just want the house to be paid off because I'll sleep better at night, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's a discussion we get into often with clients of, here's the math. And I always say, look, there's two rules at play. There's the head rule. That's the math. I can give you that math and prove out mathematically why I would think that it makes the most sense to do this. For instance, with a house not paid off, it's a low interest rate.
Right.
Your equity isn't really generating anything for you. So why put more money there? But then there's the tummy rule, I call it,
Right.
right? So I mean,
Right.
that's the sleep at night, the comfort level, and at the end of the day, that's the one that governs.
Mm.
The math is the math, and it might be right, but if at the end of the day it just still doesn't sit right with you, then do what sits right with you, because
Right. Right.
we're emotional beings, right?
Right.
So the
Yep.
math can't justify at the end of the day the emotions. You have to emotionally accept it first, and then we work out the math to make it work. It works
Yeah.
either way most
Because
of the
otherwise you
time.
don't accept it, right? You may not accept
Exactly.
it. Yeah. And then you rail against it. So,
Right.
I mean, again, a pretty simple concept, but I think it's one that we obviously struggle with because we are emotional creatures. And sometimes we want to do the mathematically best things for us because we're trying to advance our financial fortunes forward. But our emotions get in the way, and the Bugs Bunny cartoons back in the day, and you got the angel and the devil on each shoulder, fighting it out, right? So,
And this is what's interesting with a married couple, is because very
oh yeah,
often they're different.
yeah,
One might be more
yeah,
mathematical, methodical type of that mindset. The others are more emotional.
yeah.
And it's, as an advisor, appealing and working with both of them to come up with an answer that is satisfying to both of them, or at least they're comfortable with both, and then helping them recognize that, hey, you've got to think of the other spouse too.
True. Good point.
Because it's a financial decision that you're both going to be dealing with for a
Yeah.
long time. So you've got to live together with this. So at the end of the day, what's the common ground that we can come to? So
That's a good point. Well,
Yep.
again, changing hats, right? So
Yep.
you're in there
Yep.
changing hats. All right. Concept number two, Morgan, it's never enough. And Morgan talks
Yeah.
about, it gives examples of wealthy people who
Mhm.
get into trouble
Yep.
from going too far, Madoff, right?
Yeah.
and so, but why? Because fundamentally, okay, let's bring it back. Like we weren't going to spend a lot of time. We were talking, you and I, like, do we want to do another market kind of conversation because of all the tariff stuff? But we don't really want to do a whole show on it, but we can simply tie it in with this example right here.
Right.
23 and 24, 2023, 2024 markets, 22% up, right?
Right.
So you knew that this administration was coming in. You knew that they were going to put tariffs in place. We knew we were going to see some volatility.
Right.
And so if you got upset and got all, freaked out because your portfolio was going down for a couple of weeks here the last little bit, did you give up the never enough mentality? Probably not, right? Because
Right.
you were excited about the 22% up 2 years in a row, and you don't think about the downs, right?
Right.
So,
Expecting more and
right,
more.
the
And I mean,
never enough bug bites us all, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But it bites us all.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to a lot of people that are, especially this is more like maybe the A personality, the business owner, very driven salespeople, and you ask them how much is enough? Well, just a little bit more, right? I mean, it's moving that goalpost. It's like,
Yes.
well, that, I got there. Well, yeah, but just a little bit more, I
Yeah.
want this, right? What's that next goal?
Yeah.
And I mean, it can be like that in retirement. What's the number? How much do you need? And
I need $1 million.
well, you get to that, and it's
Right.
like, well, but maybe I just need a little bit more.
But what if I
because-
can get to 1.2, Phil?
Yeah, it's exactly. So, and that again is from a financial advisor standpoint, my goal or role in helping that client set a plan to say, well, this is enough, right? Based on the discussion we've had, what you want, your goals of, maybe leaving money to the kids.
Well, you're back to that logic,
whatever
right?
it is.
You're
But
back
at
to
the
that
end-
math. Because
Yeah.
you can say, hey, the 1 million gets it done. Now, if you really want to push to 1.2, that's up to you, but I can at least show you, right?
Right. And then that gives you a little bit more flexibility. Maybe you've got a little bit more spending you can do. You can do those extra big vacations or whatever it happens to be. So to me, this is that never enough. You've got to be really careful because and this is funny. I mean, I have clients that are in this scenario where, one client specifically I'm thinking of that he retired 7 years ago.
Okay.
And took a contract job for a company that was working with his former employer and has been with that company over the last 7 years. And it was only supposed to be, well, it was just this one contract we were going to finish up.
Okay.
And it wasn't so he likes to work. It was more the wife that was this, it's never enough. And it comes more from a worry of, well, do we really have enough? I don't know that this is enough. And even though you run the math, it's just that worry. Right.
Yeah.
So
we'll go back to point number one. Her experiences probably affected her in a way where she,
Yes.
So and
looking
really,
back at her parents, they didn't have much. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So to her, it might, that worry is always, it's not going to be enough. Right.
Exactly.
So, and again,
Exactly.
that's where I have to try to come in and help balance it out. And I mean, in this couple, it works out fine. He likes to work. It's not like it's preventing him from doing things that he wants to, or he wants
Well,
to
that's good.
do, because it's a flexible position.
Yeah.
But it's, when is enough?
Yeah.
So you just got to be careful with that, because at some point, I guarantee you, when you get further into retirement in your 70s, you're not going to look back and say, oh, I wish I would have worked another 10 years.
Right.
More likely you're going to look back and say, I wish I would have retired a little earlier, because, and we're joking about this, coming on the show, it's like, oh, the aches and the pains. It's, it sucks getting old, right?
Yeah.
As you age, you start to lose the ability to do certain things, and, your health and whatever happens to be. So looking back, draw that line and say, okay, what is enough? What is your goal? And enjoy it.
The Tax Smart Retiree is your comprehensive guide to mastering tax efficiency for a flourishing retirement. You will find indispensable advice and actionable strategies designed to enhance tax savings, maximize Social Security benefits, protect against market volatility, and develop a customized retirement plan. To get your free ebook, click the link in the show notes of today's episode and download your copy of the Tax Smart Retiree right now.
Well, and that leads really well to concept number 3 here, which is, what is reasonable versus rational? Is reasonable more important? Housel goes on to say that, do not aim to be coldly rational when making financial decisions. Aim to be pretty reasonable. Reasonable is more realistic and more attainable, and you have a better chance of sticking to it. Right. And that to me hits it right on the head, because sometimes when we got dollar signs in our eyes, or, like they say, don't go to the grocery store hungry, because then you buy more than you need, right? Same kind of thing, right? So it's like, if you get reasonable with your expectations or what you really truly want to have in retirement, then it's a lot more attainable. Doesn't mean you got to settle, just be reasonable.
Well, and to me, it's too, when you're looking at a goal, especially, so let's say you're just starting out and your goal is $1 million. I mean, you're looking at that big number, that's rational. I need to get there, but it's just like, oh, that's like, how am I going to do that? It's I can't get to that goal. Well, step that back, make it a reasonable, what's the approach to get there? That one step at a time. That to me is more the reasonable of, you have to have the end in mind always, that bigger picture, but don't get too focused on that, because you're going to get overwhelmed more times than not. Step back and say, okay, how do I get there one step at a time? These little goals along the way. Same thing here with that reasonable and rational. It's you can overanalyze and get too focused on that big picture number at the end. You got to always bring it back and make it a more reasonable goal that you can live with and attain.
Well, it's like the a percentage, right? Like if I can just make 12% every year, my plan will work. Well, that's probably not reasonable, right?
Right. Absolutely not. Yeah.
So
it's probably not rational, but
right. It's not probably rational either, but it's easy to ration that out when you hear people like Ramsey saying, hey, you can get 12% or whatever the case is. You can go find an argument to support what you're wanting, right? Yeah. But get reasonable about what's, truly obtainable. And do you even need 12 to truly make it work? Or are you guessing at that?
Right. Or is it that, well, if I get 12, I can get this number? It's that, moving that goalpost.
Well, that's true. Right.
We always want more. We want more.
Well, they all, so you can see how these concepts all work together.
Yep.
Well, and so, okay, we'll finish with concept 4 then. So if that's the case, knowing that we're fallible, knowing that we have emotions, leave some room for error. Concept 4 is just room for error. Room for tariffs that might throw monkeys in the wrench in the retirement, space in the market, or leave room for a pandemic, which I guess that's a little outside the box, but still, right? Just leave room for error.
Yeah, there's going to be bumps along the way. I mean, so this is a concept I talk about all the time with clients, because we do planning. And I mean, planning, that's the numbers, that's the math, right? Running the math out for the life expectancy. Does this work? Setting goals and kind of our path. And I always tell a client, I said, think of it this way. It's like, let's say you're going to take a summer and see all the national parks, right? So you're going to have to draw up a plan. You're going to have to figure out where you're going to go. You're going to have to make reservations along the way. Figure out how much this costs. Can I afford it? But I guarantee you, as you start down that path, things are going to change. You're going to have a flat tire. There's going to be, this big ball of yarn. I didn't realize that was there. I want to see that. So things are going to change, and you're going to have to move and ebb and flow with the changing environment through this trip. Same thing in retirement. We draw this map and this plan out today, but it's not cut in stone to say, nope, plan says this. We're not doing that.
Right.
It is based on everything we know today. This is the direction we're going to start walking. And it's an annual process to just revisit it all the time, every year. And I mean, you look at this every month, but typically, at least on an annual basis, let's come back to the plan. This is what we were planning to do. Has anything changed? Has the tax laws changed? Is there something different from Social Security? Has something changed in your life? Do you need more? Do you need less? Is there a health concern? I mean, there's all these different factors that play into it that we can't anticipate up front. And some of that you have to stress test to say, okay, what happens if? But at the end of the day, that's where the plan has to have room and flexibility that as you move down that path, you're going to change and ebb and flow with it. So
your plan's got to have room for error, but so do you, right?
Yes.
So you've got to kind of
you can't be that rigid. No, this is what the plan says. We're doing, X, Y, and Z.
Or like a lot of us have done, like I said earlier, you can't be like, I have to have 12% every year, and that's just what I'm going to have. That's not, leaving some room for error, because it's just not going to be, it's not reasonable.
It's not reasonable. Yes.
Right. So, I mean, all those things flow. Yeah, exactly. A lot of disappointment. So again, check out the book, folks. We'll put links in the show notes to the stuff that we normally do here. So go check out the book, The Psychology of Money, from Morgan Housel. Great conversation here with Phil, as always. And I think that's the untapped value often of working with a financial professional is you get the X's and O's, but you do get the sounding board of someone who's helped hundreds or thousands of other people retire, because we don't typically do more than one. It's our own retirement. So sitting down with somebody who's seen a few things and help people off a few ledges, it can be important. So reach out to Phil, get some time on the calendar. Descriptions are in the link below. Don't forget to subscribe to us here on Spotify or Apple or Spotify or YouTube. We're on YouTube, but we're on those other ones as well. Hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, and notification bell to catch new episodes. And we'll see you next time right here on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. Thank you, my friend.
Phil? Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.